Hey, welcome to the Glen Podcast, the best podcast you'll listen to all day. Sponsored by Mission Blueprint. Yeah, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So listen, I've got some headlines to read here. I think this is Mises Institute, June 4th, a few days ago. Will a new BRICS currency change anything? Maybe. Okay, headline number 2. WIOnews.com says, same day, June 4th, greenback backlash. What's a greenback?
U.S. dollar.
Yep. BRICS common currency targets economic weaponization of U.S. dollar. All right, so there's another one with BRICS. Goldstockbull.com says BRICS countries are going for gold.
Heck yeah.
What do you think about that, hotshot?
Hey, 102 million tons of gold added to the BRICS coffers since the start of the year. If I read that right.
That's a lot of gold.
Yeah, there's a lot of gold out there, man. I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, you start cashing in your piles.
Something's happening with gold, ladies and gentlemen. BRICS is, do you know what BRICS stands for?
Yes.
You do. BRICS means Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And BRICS isn't a brand new entity. It's been going on since 2002?
No, it's like the European Union or the United States. It's just a conglomeration of some big players that are going to play together on a common goal dream vision. Yeah,
so these countries came together, and there's speculation that they want to dominate the world economy by 2050. And, well, we blew it. But what do they have in common? Gold.
Money. Gold.
Money's in common. And so this is Cape Town, June 2nd, Reuters. Senior officials from more than a dozen countries, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, were in talks on forging closer links with the BRICS bloc of major emerging economies on Friday as it met to deepen ties and position itself as a counterweight to the West.
This got a lot of traction with the debt ceiling conversation coming out of later days of May, because the U.S. was way on the edge of defaulting, and if the Americans default on their debt, then there's global implications of, is the U.S. dollar really stable?
Is the U.S. dollar stable?
It is. I mean, it's still, no pun intended, it's the gold standard for trading worldwide. It's what major currencies move in and out of, and it's what every currency is measured against. You know, you don't go to Mexico and go, how many dollars can I get for a peso? It's how many pesos can I get for a U.S. dollar?
Okay, but countries are dropping the dollar.
They're starting to.
Name some of them. Russia's one of them.
Well, yeah, Russia, just from that standpoint. China's trying to move away. They're trying to strengthen their yen, or their, what is theirs? Japan is the yen. Is it yuan? The Chinese currency.
I don't speak Chinese.
Sorry. You don't? Kung Pao chicken.
I do speak Kung Pao very, very well.
I don't know the other countries off the top of my head, but it's the global economic world is so fascinating. What's going on in our states?
Well, so this is what's interesting, ladies and gentlemen. It seems to me, it appears that we are moving back to gold slowly.
Who's we?
Well, so we have the BRICS Union. They want their own currency, right? And they want it backed by gold. Did you know that?
That makes sense.
It would make sense.
Because it's real.
It would be like the euro.
Yeah, gold is real.
Gold is real, but they want to back it by gold now. So, and then I did some reading. Our own states, as of April 3rd, 2023, the following states have pending bills that are on the pathway to recognizing gold and silver as legal tender, and they are, see if I can get these right, Montana, Kansas, Missouri, Oregon, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Iowa, Mississippi, West Virginia, Minnesota, Vermont, Alaska, South Carolina, Idaho, Arkansas, Maine, New Jersey, Arizona, Texas.
What do you mean by legal tender?
I don't know. It appears that you could use it.
Does that go back to like the FDR days when it kind of became illegal to carry little pouches of gold around everywhere with you?
I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, there was a transition time in there when.
Yeah, I know the story. I know what happened with FDR, but I don't know what legal tender actually means in this case. Do you?
I'm assuming that it would be a legal form of transaction. So
Yeah.
If I went to Walmart, I could hand somebody a gold coin, a weighted gold coin. It wouldn't necessarily have to be embossed or minted in any shape or form. I could just say, this is 1/10 of an ounce of gold, and I would like to buy this new big screen TV.
Well, if 23 states, if they're going to do this, and if you're accurate, which that's what I think it means, you can carry gold and silver and use it to pay for things. That's a whole shift in our country. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have 23, almost half the states you can use it. That means all the Walmarts are going to have to adjust.
Right.
Right?
Right. Then corporate's not going to like that.
No.
Right now, an ounce of gold trades for $1,981 an ounce today. So, I mean, you think about how many the shavings of an ounce of gold you would need to buy your groceries every week.
Right.
How does Walmart deal with that?
I don't know. So, again, you are more on the economic side of things. I'm not, but I'm aware that this is happening. I don't think a lot of people are aware of the shift that seems to be happening towards gold.
No, because so many people, we lost the need, the desire, the want to hold gold, because it was like, oh, I'll use my debit card, or I'll just use cash. Even our parents used cash. They didn't trade in coins and currency. But think about from a transactional standpoint of using gold between your neighbors. Like, oh, you've got a boat. I want to buy your boat. I'm going to pay you some gold. I got some gold over here. I'm going to trade you for that. I mean, how novel and weird is that concept instead of using Venmo or crypto? Yeah, here, let me trade you some Bitcoin. Here you go.
It's about to get very strange if that actually happens.
Yeah.
I don't know about our state here in South Dakota. Do you know of any move to legal tender?
Nothing that I've heard. The big one that was just in the realm of currency was the governor pushing off the bill about cryptocurrency and using crypto as a form of electronic payment within the state. And that ties way back to a previous podcast that we did about the marijuana industry and legalizing marijuana, and that marijuana being illegal at the federal level makes it you can't conduct business that's illegal at the federal level at a state level. So it has to be a cash business, even though state legalizes it. And like what Colorado runs into is these businesses are very cash heavy, very cash laden when they dispense marijuana. So the Federal Reserve will come and they'll take the cash from the businesses and they'll give the businesses digital currency that they can then go use on the open market because it's not linked to an illegal activity. And that's the only thing I know about currency right now that's gone on in our state and our state legislature in the last 6 months.
So if we begin to align or juxtapose paper money and gold and silver, I mean, what's the forecast? What happens to paper money? At least the fiat dollars we have now.
Well,
because they're not gold backed.
No, but then that would have to be an adaptation by the federal to go back onto the gold standard. Basically, what you're seeing these BRICS countries doing is they're doing it in reverse, is they're collecting all this gold to eventually make a currency that's gold backed. U.S. dollar was minted and created out of the fact that there was gold behind every dollar that was printed. And then through the 40s up to the 70s, the economic system rolled that we no longer needed to be gold backed. Our dollar was strong enough on its own for what it was and what it is. And so we haven't been gold backed. So you're seeing two different reverse engineerings of getting a currency that's backed by gold somewhere. And that's if a state like Montana legalizes gold as a legal tender. Okay, what is its applications? Like, are you talking about paying off your mortgage? Are you talking about somebody who can panhandle and then go to Walmart and buy groceries with it? You know, out in is it called panhandling? Is panning when you like go through the little creeks?
That was the thing when I was a kid.
Okay. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very fascinating conversation, and especially how it all ties into our history biblically.
Right. So my understanding is we had the gold standard since the formation of this country, correct?
Absolutely.
And we were using gold and silver coins.
That's right. That's how business was conducted.
And did we have paper money as well back then? Like
No,
in the 1800s?
No, because that was considered illegal to have something represented. Now, very early on, did they start to mint? Yeah, because those are like the red dollars. And if you go to the Smithsonian's, you go to Washington, D.C., and you go to the Bureau of Engraving, they've got history of the dollar and how it's changed its look and its appearance and the reason it was printed way back in the day.
So why do you think we're going, again, these 23 or 20-some states, I guess I didn't count them, but there's a bunch of them that I named earlier. Why are they doing this?
I think everyone's seeing the writing on the wall. A national debt of $38 trillion with nothing behind it except human capital and human potential. The dollar is out there as the leading way of doing business worldwide, but what's behind the dollar? Well, it's not gold, it's people. Well, if the people are failing and the people don't look like they're going to keep producing the dollar. I mean, so I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole here with you. During this debt ceiling conversation last week, 10 days ago, whenever it was, Medicare, Medicaid are slotted to run out of financing. Like they just, and what that means is for every person retiring for the last 15 years, there's been 10 workers contributing to the Medicare system to pay for that person retiring. Well, we don't have big families anymore. My parents came from families 11. My parents only had 5. Each of my brothers only has 2. I have 5, but those 2 children now have to support 2 parents in retirement. And you do that exponentially across the line, the number of people that are going to be supporting Medicare beneficiaries in 10 years, instead of 10 to 1, it's 3 to 1. And that's not sustainable, not for what healthcare costs, not what medical costs are. And so if you think that the Medicare medical profession, which I stand in, is going to go from going to take a 70% cut in the services we render when we're used to getting X amount of dollars, that we're going to only take 30 cents on the dollar, you won't.
But what about all these migrants that are coming over legally or illegally?
Well,
They're on the payroll.
so if you come in illegally and you want to get a job in the United States, what you do is you get falsified documents. Well, if you get falsified documents and you go to an employer and you get employed, you pay Social Security in. But because it's false and illegal, you will never receive that benefit. So that's a win. That's a win for the government because they got a whole bunch of people that are going to contribute who are never going to withdraw. If they got here legally, okay, they're still going to contribute. But what's one of the most common things with, say, a good, and I don't want to stereotype. I'm so going to sound like stereotype. But what's the common saying about a good Catholic? They have big families. So why not have...
They used to.
Yeah, they used to. But I mean, go to... so going to be stereotyped here. I don't mean anything by it, but let's just use it. So say you come from Mexico and you have been a traditional Catholic and you've got a family of 7, 8, 9, 10. You come to the United States, well, why wouldn't you have 7, 8, 9, 10? You know how to live frugal. You know how to balance your budget. You know how to maintain money. You know how to live together as a family with things that Americans are moving far away from. And now you have 10 kids that are U.S. citizens who have Social Security numbers and are now going to contribute to the system for the next 70 years. I mean, it's a crazy theory, but I mean, I'm willing to walk down the line if you are.
Yeah. Oh, well, anything's possible these days. Yeah, maybe that's the intent of letting them in.
Well, I mean, why not? I mean, if you're just worried about the human capital and the financing side of it, what's 4 million immigrants who are going to come and, say, generate tenfold that many people while they're here?
Highly possible.
Highly possible. If you go into Ancestry.com and look at your family tree and just look at it from a exponential standpoint of your mother and father as the tree trunk, and then look at all the branches that came before them. It's incredible. It is absolutely incredible.
So what's the forecast then? Let's just say something crazy happens. For example,
Like,
all these countries, there's more countries who want in. And I didn't pull up the article. I should have done that. That states how a bunch of countries are going to be meeting with the BRICS core.
G7, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK and US are purchasing parity basis.
Yeah, they want into BRICS.
Yeah.
What happens if the world turns to gold? What happens to the Federal Reserve? I mean, there's Federal Reserves that have been given money all around the world. There's only like 7 countries they're not in, right? Or 4?
Yeah.
What happens to the Federal Reserve if countries go back to the gold standard? Maybe it doesn't matter.
I don't think it'll matter because I think the Federal Reserve, in its name, the Federal Reserve sounds like it's a government entity, but it's not. It's a world bank.
Right. That's why I'm asking, because it's a family-owned bank, or some families.
Yeah. I don't think anything changes per se to you or I, because most of the people listening to our podcast, we're not going to suddenly start carrying around bullions of gold with us and transact with it daily. But if you're a multinational company, if you're a corporate entity, you might start conducting business in gold exchange as opposed to U.S. dollar exchange, because gold is truly universal. It doesn't matter whose picture is on the front of it. Gold is gold. Whereas the U.S. dollar is tied to one economic system, one country. I mean, it really flows more into that model of one world order. You know, what came first, man or gold? Well, most people tell you gold came first. But
most people would be wrong. Even though gold was in the beginning, as we see when you read Genesis, gold is God's money, right? So if gold is, this is interesting, because I like the spiritual piece. Mm-hmm. Gold is God's money. It's very biblical. They use gold all the time. There's 700 references to gold and silver in the Bible. Mm-hmm. The Bible says this is from, we joked about his name. He's we call him a minor prophet. Haggai 2:8, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, says the Lord of hosts. Mm-hmm. Gold is God's money.
You know why gold is valuable?
Because it's a precious metal.
But what makes it precious?
We do.
What do you mean we?
Like we give cars value, right?
Sure.
But I think you have a different idea.
I do.
Something tells me.
I do. But I wanted to know where your headspace was at.
I don't know. I don't know where my headspace is at. Hey, I've had a long 9 days serving meals for people at camp. I'm still tired, but go ahead.
Okay. So this question got asked to me a number of years ago, right around Christmas time, because I talked to my patients about faith and where they're at in their journey. Is why was God, baby Jesus, given frankincense, myrrh, and gold at his birth? I know frankincense has tremendous healing. It's a natural oil. Like, there's a lot of. Do you know why myrrh?
To prepare the body for burial.
Yeah, and again, it's another oil for sanitation and being healthy.
But gold is the same way.
It is.
It is the same way, yeah.
That's where gold got its definition of being a precious metal, because who in previous cultures, prior to Jesus' time, prior to the Roman Empire, prior to us knowing all of the known world, why did every culture, Mayans, Native Americans, Mongolians, why did they all, the leaders, the rulers, have gold all around them?
I don't know.
It's health qualities. People who had gold and wore gold and were adorned in gold were able to fight off disease. They stayed healthier. It was just one of those metals that made the body more precious.
Right. That one makes sense, because in the Catholic Church, we use a gold chalice.
And the CDC, in all of the years of its existence, has tested the Holy Chalice in Atlanta, where the CDC's headquarters is, and has never found a microbe in the chalice.
So you're saying it's purely health reasons?
It's purely health. That's why it's a precious metal because it gives the wearer, it absorbs the ions and the energy of it into our body, and it keeps us healthier. It's not going to keep you from getting cancer, but there's medical logic out there of why you wear gold and what it does for you metabolically.
So if I wore a gold wedding ring,
long term, that's going to keep you healthier. So this is where you talk about gold standard. God's currency is gold. Well, you start putting the world on a gold currency again. What are we saying to Satan and everyone else?
See, that's my question. Yeah, what are the spiritual implications here? Are we turning back to God as a universe?
Doesn't that seem weird that China would want to turn towards God when they persecute Christians?
Well, they got to figure a few things out, but it's baby steps, right? What does Steve Martin say? Baby steps, baby steps, baby. So I wonder if this is, I don't know, prophetic, where the world is sick of the way we've been living, the countries, and they want to go back to gold.
Could God be working that in reverse of the world's gotten so disgusting that I'm going to put these world powers, I'm going to deliver them back into my family, back into my house with gold.
Could be.
Don't even know what they're chasing, and they're going to chase it right back to God.
Yeah, I would have never put that together actually before this podcast, but that's possibly what's happening here. So how does the normal person begin to prepare? Let's just say this happens. All right? Let's prognosticate. Is that the word?
Prophesy? Sure. Prognosticate, whatever.
That the world goes back to a gold standard. I'll just say it that way.
Okay.
Should you and I buy gold and silver coins?
If you could get your hands on some, yeah. I'd buy them when you could. Gold over the last year has raised 7.85% in value. So just holding a gold coin in and of its value itself is profitable to your family and to your security. One thing that we've known over history is gold is never not tradable, is never not sellable. Never once in history has somebody said, oh, you got gold, that's just crap. Throw it away.
Yeah, like Confederate money.
Right, it always has value. But you and I can take a dollar bill and we can shred it in half and it has no value anymore. So, yeah, I think from a standpoint of having some on hand or having some that's tangible to you, I think that's great. Have a safety deposit box you keep it in, or a glass jar in the backyard, whatever.
Glass jar in the backyard.
So funny story. My brother-in-law, he bought an old farmstead, about 6-7 miles outside of a city in Iowa, and the guy that had owned it at the turn of the 1900s, he had a fairly wooded lot on the corner and a little house, and he had a little sheep yard, little fenced-in yard, and he came back from the gold rush, the 1800 gold rush out in California, and a lot of gold. And when this was before banks were really prevalent here in the Midwest, when people needed money, they would come to him and he'd find out what the terms were and he'd negotiate with them, and then he'd disappear for a half hour out of the house, and pretty soon he'd come back and
grab his shovel.
Yep. Yeah, and he'd go dig up his little pile of gold, and he'd lend people money. And, yeah, I mean, he was a banker before bankers really were a thing back in the day.
Well, yeah, I had a cousin who he lived through the banks when they...
Oh, the 20s?
The 20s. He lived through the 20s. I think he was probably a young kid, but he never trusted a bank again. He kept all his money at home, and it was right next to a shotgun.
Which would be about right.
Ladies and gentlemen, talking about BRICS, we're talking about all these countries that want in on BRICS, and
all
it looks
states.
Like states are wanting on gold and silver is legal tender. And I watch some of the news online. I don't know what to think about any of the news today, but a lot of people are saying to buy silver. And one of the reasons to buy silver is because if you're a guy like me, you don't have money to buy gold. And silver might be a hot commodity because we'll need it more in some of the boards they use for computers and technology.
Well, that's just it. And silver is such an easy, inexpensive commodity to trade and to do stuff with. And there's so much stuff around us that has silver in it that you can harvest. It's not difficult. We don't want bullion.
Are you checking the silver prices?
I am right now.
Silver
is $23.66 an ounce.
So that if you want a piece of silver right now, that's the spot price.
Yep.
So you're going to pay around 27, 28, 29, 20, $30, depending on what you want. If you want American Eagle, you're probably around 34, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of cool. I think that's a hot commodity. And if I'm telling you, if things do go this way, the United States goes back to the gold standard, you're going to want a stack of those American Eagles.
Well, and this is just it. I mean, you start looking at this, things go sideways with economy side, things go sideways with the society.
Things are going sideways.
There's a whole lost art of bartering. We call it
Right.
Facebook Marketplace, but I mean, just go on there and instead of people asking for dollars, they're going to ask exchange for a dozen eggs or a gallon of milk or things that are tangible to survival. And sometimes what you can't trade, you need some coin to purchase.
It looks like we could be heading in that direction. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, it might be worth stacking some silver and gold. It might be. If I had a bunch of money, I certainly would be. But what do you think? Any final comments, final thoughts?
I think this whole conversation we're having really brings into the value of knowing your history of your country and knowing the history of how the economics of your country works. And if you're deaf, dumb, and blind about it, then you're not going to hear the airplane or the tank that's going to roll you over. You're not going to see the end when it's coming. And if you're just a go with the crowd person, the Native Americans used to run buffalo off the edge of a cliff because once they got the first one to jump, the rest usually just followed. And I don't want to see any of our listeners or anybody that's close to our families not be prepared and not to be at least a little bit curious about what's going on in the world around them. That's why we're doing this.
So on this podcast, I had Father Brian Eckridge on, it was last year, about preparing. And I think we should do a podcast on preparing for food. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Because...
Or how do you prepare food? I mean, that would be a great podcast.
It's so funny the world we live in. My good friend was talking to it was a high school student who said, well, we don't really need farmers. And he said, well, where do you go get your food? Well, if we want food, we just go to Walmart and buy it.
Or Hy-Vee or...
But he said, well, how do they get their food? Well, they do it. Well, she had no concept of farming in agriculture and growing wheat and rye and all. Anyway,
I've got a great article I wrote about 10 years ago about how you can buy an apple in December, even though there's not an apple being harvested in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh yeah, it gets very fascinating.
You wrote the article?
Uh-huh.
Oh, let's feature it.
Oh, it's no big deal.
Hey, Dr. Willard's got an article on apples. By the way, I just planted 3 new apple trees. That's one way I'm preparing.
You and Johnny Appleseed.
I love apple.
Okay.
I could live off of apples.
You could.
So listen, my final thoughts are, ladies and gentlemen, I already said it. This here says 23 U.S. states move to reclaim gold and silver as legal tender. So there is a shift happening. Don't get caught. I don't want to say don't get caught with your pants down. Bad. But don't get caught. Help me out here. Don't get caught what?
Don't get your got with your hand in a cookie jar. Don't.
Cookie jar's good.
Yeah.
You might want to consider preparing, getting some gold, getting some silver. I was in Costco not long ago, and I go and feed my kids to the free samples, fill them up, and then we get a hot dog, right? And I said to this lady, by the way, are you buying gold and silver? I'm just curious. She said, we are. I said, are you really? We are buying gold. We just bought a bunch of gold. I'm thinking, gosh, I wish I had money to buy gold. Mm-hmm. And I said, why? Well, my husband and I, we do not trust anything that's happening in this country financially and in the world. And you can always go for the gold. It's always tradable, and it's a great bet. And I think that's my final word. It's a great bet. Why not bet on gold?
Bet
Why
on
not
gold.
Bet gold and silver. So I'm going to shut my mouth.
I love it.
I'm going to shut down the podcast, shut us down. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's always great to be with you. Dennis, thanks again. Remember, you are loved and may God strengthen
The bars
of your gates. Hey, thanks for listening to the Glenn Gower Podcast, sponsored by Mission Blueprint. Mission Blueprint is a nonprofit ministry started by Glenn and Jamie to sanctify the family. Our income is donation-based, and we need your help. Please support us financially by going to www.mission-blueprint.org and be a part of our financial team. Thank you, and may God strengthen the bars of your gate.